Yo, I'm Brendan. If I was going to completely restart my investing journey right now this year, I would do things a lot differently. I would avoid a lot of risk. I would end up with a lot more money. And so I'll show you what I would do if I was restarting from day one today, step by step. The beauty of this is that you can learn from my mistakes and other people's mistakes and then not repeat them for yourself. So you can skip that whole first time period of like the 5 years where I floundered and I didn't have my accounts optimized and I invited too many fees in by using the wrong people and everything went kind of slower than it needed to go. And then once I figured this stuff out, then I was optimized and everything really took off. And so it's like cheating. You get to have a shortcut here that I never got to have, but this is the video that I wish I had 15 years ago before I started investing, before I studied this and knew what to do. The first thing that I would do if I could do this all over again is start by absorbing all the free money. Odds are your workplace has an opportunity for you to get free money somewhere, whether that's through a retirement account that you can actually put money into or through your health savings plan if that's an option for you. And so I'll go through both of those examples now and my own experience with them and how much free money you're talking about here. The first one is the more common one that you've probably heard of, a 401k, but you could also have a 403b depending on the kind of industry you're in or some other kind of basic way for you to save for your financial future and to get a free match from your company. The most common way this is set up is that you get a dollar for dollar match for all the money that you put into the account up to a limit. And in my experience, I've never seen that limit in like a dollar figure. They always do it in a percentage of your salary. Initially, I know that feels kind of strange to talk about a percentage of your salary being sent to savings because we don't think about that in percentages. We think about it in terms of dollars. Okay, is that $100? Is that $500? How much money am I actually giving up here? But once you do a little bit of math and maybe you can ask your HR person for help, it does make a lot more sense. How to figure out how much money we're talking about here is you take your total pay before taxes and multiply it by the percentage of money that we're talking about saving. This is not your paycheck amount because that's after taxes. We're talking about that dollar figure that's up higher on your pay stub that's before taxes are taken out and Social Security and whatever else. It's that top line figure. So a common example of this might be that your company matches you dollar for dollar everything you put into your 401k up to 3%. So if that was the case, your step one would be find out exactly how much money your company will match, make a gap happen in your life, spend less money so you can for sure get that full match. In this case, it would be 3%. So say, hey, no matter what, I'm gonna spend less money so that I can put this 3% in that 401k so that I can get the free money from them. So you talk to your HR person, your payroll person, whoever that is at your company and say, I wanna sign up for 3% 401k contributions. They would do the paperwork for you. It might take a few weeks or something for it to kick in, but then pretty soon you'll see that as a line item too on your pay stub. It'll say insurance or Social Security or whatever else and 401k. The reason we do this first is this is probably the biggest chunk of free money that you're gonna get, and this amounts to a 100% return, and you're not gonna find that anywhere. You're doing nothing to earn this money. That's why I'm calling it free money. All you're doing is being an employee and parting with 3% of your salary. Based on average stock market returns, you'd be talking about waiting somewhere between 5 and 10 years to get a 100% return on your money. And so think of it this way, you're fast forwarding the growth of your money by between 5 and 10 years. That's incredible. But sometimes the situation is a little bit more difficult because like at my old company, for example, they only matched you 50 cents on the dollar. And so you wouldn't get an exact dollar for dollar match. As an example, it's not, I'll put in $200 this month for my 401k and the company puts in $200 on my behalf for the 401k. It's if you put in 200, they would give you 100. But the part of that that's tricky is that we still got up to 3%. And so the way that you did that is you would have to send in 6% of your money. The company would end up matching 3% of your money. And so maybe I would have to put in like $400 a month into the 401k and then they would contribute their 200. And so for me to get that full match, that's the goal here. Whatever it takes to get the full match, maybe that's 3%, 6%, whatever it is, figure out the terms from your HR person and go get the full match. Even for me, that 50 cents on the dollar match is still incredible. It's still way better than any performance I can expect in the stock market. And I'm not finding hundreds of dollars like laying under a bed or in a couch cushion here. And so I've got to do something else to find that free money. This is the easiest way. Another way I've seen that you can get free money from your work is through your insurance plan. And this only makes sense if it works with your health situation and if you're okay with a high deductible health plan. Because where I've seen this in the past is where your company will give you money in your HSA. A health savings account is probably the best possible way for us to save and invest money anyway, let alone when it comes to health savings. And so what you'd have to do to find out if there's free money here is talk to your HR person and see, do we have an HSA? And if I sign up for it, does the company contribute any money to that account for me? A lot of companies probably won't, but some will. And so if it works for your life and your health situation to have an HSA, what's really cool is if you sign up for it, you can opt into putting money into the account, which is probably a wise idea. The money grows tax-free. You can take it out without any penalties or whatever if you're using it for health expenses. And in the meantime, if the company is putting in 150, 300, $400 every month for you for your health savings, then the amazing thing is you get to keep that money. That money gets to be invested and grow over time. And because it's in an HSA account, it grows tax-free. I think the perfect time to jump into one of these is, especially if you're young and you're healthy and you don't have a lot of health costs right now. If that's the case for you, an HSA makes all the sense in the world. And if this was available to me, like let's say I go back in time 15 years, I'm 22 again, I'm working at a Target store, or I'm selling used cars, or I'm doing one of the many jobs that I did to try and make ends meet in my youth. I'm still kind of youthful, I'm 37. Then I would sign up for an HSA right away. Honestly, I would still do it even if I didn't get a free like company match or a little company chunk of money that they put in there. I would have done this and contribute a little bit of money every month just to build that up over time. But as I'm saying that, I'm remembering that my wife and I made a big mistake with our HSA, and that was we forgot to invest the money. That same mistake can also happen with your 401k. Depending on how these accounts are structured, they can very well let you set up the account, put money in the account, get company match put into the account, or get that company money for the HSA. It can all be getting shoveled in there and not be invested at all. Just dead in the water, laying there, doing nothing for you. It sickens me to think about, because we were using an HSA for, gosh, I think we've used it for like 4 or 5 years now. And it wasn't until this year, like a month or two ago, that I went in there and I logged into our account and I thought, oh, I wonder what we're invested in. Maybe I should be the efficient guy who thinks about investing all the time and make sure that our investments are optimized. We weren't investing in anything. We had never picked. It was just sitting there in like essentially a savings account, but I think it was getting 0.1% interest over all these years. And so it's nice and it's helpful to set up these accounts and to have a 401k match and do all of that, but you've got to complete the process and make sure that the money is actually being invested somewhere. It's one of those things you probably only need to make sure it happens once. Like whenever you first set it up, ensure that the money's being invested. I don't think it's going to ever get like uninvested magically over the years. For some reason, someone turns off the investment switch. I don't think that's a thing, but man, what a frustrating find whenever I went in there and went, really? We haven't been investing this at all? How much more money would we have in there? We probably have 70% more money in our HSA right now if we didn't make that mistake. And people do that with 401ks all the time too. They forget to invest their money. So make sure that's not you. All right, so if we zoom out for a second here, we've completed step one. So we've gotten a 401k or a 403b or whatever kind of retirement account is with our company if they have a match. Then we figured out what we need to do to get the full match. Maybe that's put in 2%, they match it dollar for dollar, boom, done. You put in 2%. Maybe like it was for me, I had to put in 6% to end up getting half of that back and getting that match. Cool, sign me up for 6%. Get all that money allocated there, get it set up, make sure it's invested. And then also while we're in there talking to the company HR person or whoever, investigate the HSA situation, see if there's a free match there, if that kind of makes sense for your life and your lifestyle and your health situation and what you think about the future. A high deductible health plan could be really cool. And so if I was doing it all over again, I would for sure sign up for an HSA. But that's not enough money to invest. I think a lot of people might stop there because they're going, hey, I'm putting in 6% of my money. The company's putting in 3% of their money. So in total, that's like me investing 9% of my income. That's pretty good. You read some articles online about how much money you should be investing and they'll be like, oh yeah, the average person should probably save and invest 10-15% of their income. So you go, okay, I'm checking the box. I'm almost there, 10%, good. Now I can go spend the rest of the money on burritos and race cars. Maybe I buy a shiny new axe. I chop down this tree outside the window. The world is good. I'm happy. My hobbies are satiated. Everything's good. And that's kind of the mentality that I had when I was younger too, which was like, how little can I do to check this box? Okay, my future is secured. I've done something that's retirement oriented. I'm investing money. I'm done with that. Now I can move on to the rest of my life, which is me spending money on fun stuff. And if I had to go back and start this all over again, I would have a totally different mindset. I would like flip those two priorities. And I would say, okay, I'm still going to have a lot of fun, but what I'm going to do is find ways to have fun that are free or almost free, because my priority is going to be to save and invest absolutely as much money as possible as early as possible. The only way that we tap into the power of compound interest is save and invest early and often and as much as we can. And so if I was 22 and I could put 6% into my 401k and get a 3% match, that's all fine and dandy. Maybe invest $100-200 a month into the HSA, that's all good. And honestly, at that point, I would have not a whole lot more money to invest based on the income I had, but I would still find a way to invest more. And here's how I would do it. Because I was young, because I had a lot of time for the money to grow, I didn't have such a high income that I would be phased out of using a Roth IRA. And because the benefit of the Roth IRA is that you can put money in there, have it grow, hopefully it grows, tax-free over the rest of your whole life. And if you need to, pull out the contributions you make. It's like the ultimate flexible retirement investment account. I would jump all over a Roth IRA. And so because we're starting over right now, day one in summer of 2024, I would pick the Robinhood Roth IRA because they're giving you a 1% match on whatever you're contributing. Now, a critical difference here is your 401k match, your company's dollar for dollar match, or even your 50% on the dollar match is still a lot more powerful than the Robinhood match. And here's why. Whenever you put in $100 into your 401k and you get $100 back, that's a 100% match. The Robinhood match is a 1% match. So let's say you put in $1,000 over the course of the year into the Robinhood Roth IRA, you're only going to get a 1% match on that. You're getting $10. It's a vastly different sum of money we're talking about here. Still free money. It's still part of that like absorb the free money category that we started with here, but it's going to be a lot less than your work 401k. And that's why we prioritize that first. And then we've kind of downshifted into the Roth IRA. But here's why I'm still doing the Roth IRA, and here's why I'm doing it with Robinhood. The Roth IRA has amazing benefits for a young person who's not getting heavily taxed right now. Because whenever you put money right into a Roth IRA, you're getting taxed on it the year that you put money in there. And so if you don't have a massive income and you don't have a 40 or 50% tax rate, then by all means, government, tax me now. Tax me today. Get it over with. Then the money is taxed once, and that's it. For the rest of all time, it's not taxed again. It grows tax-free. You withdraw it tax-free. Everything happens tax-free from then on out. And so you're taking the smallest hit possible. It'd be like if you said, I have to get punched by someone. Who do I want to get punched by? Well, I don't want to get punched heavily, which would be like if you had a high income or if you're investing in a traditional IRA later on in life, maybe there's a bunch of money in there and for whatever reason you have a high tax rate later in life. That'd be like saying, oh yeah, I'll get punched by Mike Tyson. That'll be great. That tax punch would feel terrible. Whenever you're young with a low income and you don't have a heavy tax rate, that's like getting punched by a 3-year-old. It still doesn't feel great. I mean, they can potentially hit you somewhere that hurts, especially because they're right there at that right height. But with that tiny little fist and that tiny little arm, they're not going to generate a whole lot of power. And so you go, okay, it hurt for 10 seconds. Now I'm good for the rest of my life. Never have to get punched by that tax man again. I'm good. And the reason I would do it at Robinhood is because of that 1% match. And it's just very easy to use. Like Robinhood's so simple. You get it set up, you throw the money in there, you get a 1% match. Even in 2024, if we max that thing out, which is $7,000 per year that we can put into a Roth IRA, getting a 1% match on that only amounts to $70 extra. So it's not going to make or break your retirement, but I'll take $70. If you're going to give it to me, I'll take it. I'm going to use a Roth IRA somewhere, so I may as well get $70 extra for doing it here. So how much would we be investing in there? I would say as much as humanly possible. To max that thing out over the course of the year to get $7,000 in it for the first year, that'd be contributing $583 per month. And so if I was 22 right now, I don't think I would be making enough money to max the thing out, but I would go for it. I would do everything that I possibly could to max it out because the earlier you get the money in there, the more options you have later in life. And Robinhood's not my all-time favorite investing service, but they're giving us the free money, so it kind of makes sense. If I could max it out, I would. So on the 401k, I would put enough money in there to get the free match, put some money in the HSA, max out the entire Roth IRA. And here's where I would defer from the commonly held wisdom, because now is where the Reddit flowcharts of the world and a lot of the investing people that write articles online say, then what you do is you put all the rest of the money you have back into your 401k. As I've thought about this, that's not what I would do because I would plan for an early retirement. The only real problem I have with retirement accounts is the fact that by and large, the money is kind of locked up in there behind fees, behind early withdrawal penalties, behind taxes. And so if you're doing this and you're at 22 years old or you're young enough to really take advantage of this now, then odds are you shouldn't have to wait until you're 60 or 70 to retire. You're going to have a lot more options than that and be a lot freer sooner than the average person. And so I would set that up right now. I still love the Roth IRA because it has that flexibility of that $7,000 per year that we're putting into it. You could take back out if you needed it. So even that's not properly locked up like most retirement accounts are. As far as I know, the Roth IRA is the only one that really gives you that flexibility. But instead of putting all the rest of your money back into the 401k, like a lot of the experts say, I would choose a taxable brokerage account, and here's why. The beauty of a taxable brokerage account is the flexibility it gives you. Yeah, it's got taxable in the name, so that's kind of scary because you are going to get taxed on it. But even then, it's not like you're getting taxed every year because the account is growing. You're getting taxed whenever you make a profit from it. If we're using it to save money for a relatively long-term purpose, we're not going to be selling a lot of investments out of it. We're not going to be taking a lot of income out of it. And I would specifically invest in a way that helps me to not get taxed now so that I wouldn't get hit with any taxes on it until I was actually ready to pull the money out. And now I would invest as much money as I possibly can that I had after doing the 401k, the HSA, the Roth IRA, everything else that I could possibly scrounge together, I would throw into the taxable brokerage account. And if I'm you right now, I'm probably thinking, that's a nice plan, Brendan. I see some logic behind it, but how do you get all this money? Because we're talking about somewhere between 3 and 6% going to your 401k. Then there's some money involved going to the HSA. Let's call that another 5%. Then $7,000 per year going into the Roth IRA. At this point, you're probably living without $10,000 of your income. So then where are you going to get this other money on top of your living expenses to keep investing? The taxable brokerage account sounds fine, but where are we getting this extra money? And here's where a big lifestyle shift would happen with me. If I could go back in time 15 years and talk to my 22-year-old self, I would say, look, Brendan, what I'm telling you to do here is to not forsake your friendships, to not just work all the time. But right now, you're spending a huge amount of time on leisure activities. You're watching all the shows and the movies and the things you want. You're playing video games, you're playing games on your phone. You're spending a lot of time just ambling around, wasting time. But the wasteful time that you have in between the quality time with friends or the quality time with your wife or whatever is happening, I would say take the bulk of that unused time and work. Either pick up extra time at your current job if that's an option for you, get another job, like literally work a second job if you can, or maybe take on more responsibility or get another job that fulfills all that time and goes, I'm going to maximize who I am as far as someone who can bring value to the marketplace so that I can maximize my paycheck. And if I was 22 and I heard my 37-year-old self saying that, I'd say, hey, Brendan, A, why did you gain 20 pounds? And B, no, that doesn't sound fun. I want to do what's fun. And so if you're experiencing a similar kind of reaction to that advice to say, go work more, pick up a second job or whatever, and you're thinking that sounds like way too much work, I don't think it's going to be worth it. I think I want to have some free time. You know, what I don't think we should be doing is working all the time. I don't think you need to have no free time. I think you still prioritize dates with your significant other. I think you still prioritize quality time with friends and quality events that you can plan together, go do fun activities, all of that. But especially when we're young, the aimless time that we waste doing stupid stuff is just incredible. And now that I'm knocking on the door of 40 and I don't have as much of that time, I would wish that I had the opportunity to go back and maximize the time when I was younger, because it would benefit me not just today, but also for the rest of my life. I think I could have easily generated another $10,000 per year that I could have invested either through another job or taking my current job more seriously, picking up more time, working for a promotion, or looking for a different job that paid me more. But I just wasn't hungry enough. I didn't care enough. And there's two reasons why I think it is actually worth working more when you're younger, prioritizing earning more money so that you can invest the money, not spend it. And reason number one is you're trading non-precious time for precious time. We're talking about giving up largely screen time or non-essential time with people that aren't that close to you anyway, and you're going to trade that time for time in your future that is really precious. Time with kids, time with your parents who are getting older and older and who aren't going to live for forever. For a lot of us, whenever we're in our early 20s, we're not married yet. And so you can burn that time whenever you're younger and single and work more to then have more time with your spouse whenever you're older. And so if I could go back in time and restart from 2024 right now, I would try and generate another $10,000 to $20,000 at least strictly for investing. I'm not going to use it for my lifestyle and buy axes and burritos and race cars and whatever tickles my fancy. I'm using the money to invest. And that's really the second reason why I would do this and why I think it's worth it, is the impact of doing that over time is actually huge. And I think this is the reason why I didn't do this when I was in my 20s, is I couldn't see the impact. I couldn't understand what the opportunity cost was. All I could see is, look, I've got free time now. I don't feel like working more. I feel like playing a phone game. I feel like playing Xbox, so I'm going to do that. And so I didn't understand at that time that saying yes to those activities was saying no to other activities in the future. But that's really what we're doing whenever we're doing that. Because if that's the difference between you retiring at 59 or you retiring at 39, think about having 20 more years of your life to do whatever you want with. We're not talking about wasting a few hours playing Xbox. You're saying, now I've got 24 hours a day where I don't have to work. I've got 24 hours a day to spend with my kids or my spouse or my parents who are getting older, my siblings who might move away and do something else with their life. I can take advantage of all of that to the fullest. And there's still so much time left even after doing that you could really dive into your hobbies then. Okay, you want to play Xbox? Play Xbox really well. Do research. You're an adult now. You can probably be better at Xbox than some kid who doesn't know how to play the game. For me, I liked to exercise a lot back then, but now if I had the time, if I didn't have to work, I would be out here in the mountains, in the forest, exploring new peaks and new areas, trail running, and just having epic adventures with friends, because I would have the time to do it and I would have the space to do it and the scheduling flexibility. And I think we don't choose that for the same reason that I didn't choose it, is it's really hard to visualize. What does that actually mean for your life? What could this extra money that you're working for become? What does that equate to for your life? But I think in the simplest terms, think of it this way. What if you had $750,000 more in your bank account than you do today? What if I just said, snap, now you check your bank account balance, there's an extra 750 grand in there. What opportunities would that give you in your life even today? Maybe you buy a house, maybe you help your parents pay off their house, or you pay for some medical bills, maybe you get out of debt. What it gives you is options. It gives you the ability to be more of yourself. myself. And so in choosing to not spend so much time with screens or doing other frivolous activities in my early years, if I worked, made more money, and invested more, I'd be giving myself tons of options now. I think the other thing that a lot of us who have lived past our 20s would tell you is that your 30s and 40s and 50s come faster than you would think. I know 15 or 20 years from now sounds like it's just an eternity, like, oh my gosh, that's gonna take forever for me to get there. It happens pretty darn fast. And so I come onto YouTube and I make videos and I talk about setting your future self up or investing for 15 or 25 or 35 years, and it seems like, oh man, I'll never experience that because that's so far away, it may as well never even happen. But I'm telling you right now, 15 years can go by fast, and I'm sure there's people that are older than me who would say 20 or 30 or 40 years can go by in a blink also. And so it's worth prioritizing that future self because your future self will be here a lot sooner than you think. All right, now I can't talk about all that stuff and not try and figure out actual dollar figures. So let's do a little bit of math with an investing calculator and then try and figure out what we're really talking about in dollars and cents here. Because if anything, I'm too curious to not. So let's do it. Let's say we start with nothing and we're talking about investing from, well, for me, it'd be the last 15 years. So if I could start over from day one in 2024, I've been investing and thinking about this stuff and studying it for 15 years. So we'll say we're going to do this plan for 15 years. And so if we invest the way we've talked about so far, we've got some money going into the 401k, probably a few $100 a month. We're maxing out the Roth IRA, $583 a month. And then because we've taken on the extra roles and responsibility, we're putting in another $10,000 or $20,000 per year, which amounts to another $1,500 a month. So we're probably talking about investing a substantial amount of money. $2,300 a month, $2,500 a month, something like that. A huge amount of money, or at least for me, it felt like a huge amount of money. I mean, that was like all the money I had when I was 22. So I would have been effectively doubling the money I made to be able to invest all that extra. It would have been nuts. So even just after 15 years of doing that, I could have gone from zero to about $840,000 invested. So $840,000 seems like a big number. But what does that mean for us in terms of financial freedom? What does that give us in our life? So you know what time it is, spreadsheet time. Well, based on the wisdom that we have out there and the people who know math better than me, they basically say that from that amount, you could withdraw $33,000 per year and never run out of money. You just leave that sum invested and you could pull out 33 grand per year. Maybe that's a brand new car for yourself every year. Maybe that's the best vacation ever every single summer. Maybe that means at 37 years old, you go down to half time at work and you work 20, 25 hours a week, maybe 3 days a week, and the rest of the income that you need is supplemented by that. That's a ridiculous amount of freedom to have at 37. People don't have that kind of freedom at 37 unless they've like built and sold a tech company in Southern California, and that's 1 in a million people. And so you could be a totally average person, an average 22-year-old who gets started on this plan and sticks with it and has the kind of freedom that multimillionaires have. And this is also assuming that you don't ever invest more money. Because if you're that kind of a go-getter for 15 years, there's a chance you'd be able to invest even harder than this, but we'll just keep things constant for this math. I mean, then let's just push it out another 5 years and just see what happens. What if we do this for 20 years? You've got almost $1.5 million then. $1.469 million. That would be a nice feeling to have that in the bank. So how much can we safely withdraw? $58,000 per year. I mean, as long as you don't have a crazy lifestyle, that could very well be enough for you to live on. I feel like it's going to increase at a pretty crazy rate. What happens if we just push it 3 more years and we go to up to 45 years old? So we're doing this investing plan for 23 years total. There you go. $2 million. So in 3 more years, you go from 1.5 to 2 million. That's nutso. And the amount we can safely withdraw then, basically 80 grand per year. And I know I'm doing this theoretical, like rewinding time to go back to when I was 22 because it's 15 years ago for me. If I could start over, I'd started when I was 22. And so I'd be starting over at 22, but here we are in 2024. Here's the plan I would do. And I would go forward the next 15 to 23 years and do this. But we have opportunities like this even now. You know, I've got ways that I'm wasting time and money right now that I could be investing more. I could be more focused on the goal at hand. And I'm still battling with that kind of self-discipline to say my future self 10 or 15 years from now would love it if I didn't waste time now. Even I would probably feel better if I didn't waste time now. Like, what's the point in wasting time and watching a show you don't like or playing a phone game you don't really even care about? Like, if we can maximize that time now, we'll be so much happier with our future. But it's just a difficult game to play. Okay, spreadsheet time is over. A couple more questions we need to answer in terms of this plan, because these are also mistakes that I made and things that cost me time and money and stress and just were a mess. And so these were things that I wouldn't do the same way I did whenever I was younger. Number one question we need to answer: who is organizing all of this? Who is managing these accounts? Who is picking what we invest in? Are we going to go with some particular financial manager? Is there somebody in mind or a company in mind that needs to run all this for us? Because for some of us, this sounds very complicated. And question number two is, what the heck are we actually investing in? Now, if we answer number one, we might be answering number two, but those are two things that we need to actually answer in terms of this plan. And the question of number one, who is steering this ship? Who is devising this whole plan of what we're doing and what we're investing in and how this money is being managed? We are. I am. It's 2024. We have so many resources out there in terms of books and podcasts and videos like this one that we can watch to learn about financial stuff. We've got to use our own common sense a lot and sift through the charlatans and the scammers and the people who are over-promising and under-delivering in terms of what they're talking about. Because as far as I'm convinced, there's still no true get-rich-quick scheme out there that works. Everything that we do in terms of generating money for ourselves is a value exchange. If you learn how to add a lot of value, you'll make a lot of income. If you're not adding a lot of value, you're not going to make a lot of income. And that's the same whether you're a Target employee or an axe sharpener, or if you're starting some crazy Amazon FBA drop shipping business because you saw some guy's TikTok and he's standing in front of a Lambo and now you want a Lambo. That could actually be his life. That could actually be his business, but it's because he's adding a tremendous value to the marketplace. People must love buying his stuff. He must have really efficient systems put in place to do that. It's not impossible for us to do that, but we have to go through that giant learning curve that he went through to have that business. And so we're the ones having to figure that out. We're not relying on somebody else to come and teach us. There's no one who's going to hold our hand through our career to help us to make that extra $10,000 or $20,000 per year minimum to invest in the taxable brokerage account to give us all the options in our life. We're going to have to figure that out. We're going to do the research on our career. We're going to do the research on what kind of investing accounts we want to use. We're going to understand what an HSA is and how to use that account and maximize it. We're going to understand the withdrawal penalties of a 401k and compare that to a Roth IRA. We're going to ingest all that information and leverage it for our own future. Because whenever we opt out of that kind of learning and that kind of confusing process, we opt out of the potential of having benefits from doing all that. You know, it's like saying, I don't want to go for a run, but I also don't want to be out of shape. Well, those are mutually exclusive. If you want to be in shape, you have to exercise. There's no way to be in shape without doing that. You know, in the 1950s, they had like those crazy workout machines, like the belt that went around your stomach and like jiggled you around, or any like crazy infomercial back from like the 90s and the early 2000s that claimed their workout machine somehow gave you like amazing abs and you just did like some weird crunching movements for 5 minutes a day and everyone on the commercial had like a six-pack and looked awesome. There's no easy fix to these complex problems. We are the captain of our ship. We are the only ones who can save us. We are the ones who are going to do the work to figure that out. I'll link some books in the description if you want to read books about investing. If that's your jam to invest information through books, these are the ones that have helped me the most in terms of my financial journey and understanding the basics of how investing works and retirement accounts and all that jazz. They also help you to think about money the right way, like Vicki Robbins' book, and then also The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. But if books aren't your jam, that's totally fine. A podcast that I really like if you want to learn about early retirement is called Choose FI. That's like Choose Financial Independence, FI. It's co-hosted by two guys. One of them's Brad and the other one I forget his name. But they started it kind of on a lark. Like the one guy had retired early already. The other one was thinking about retiring early. I believe he was a pharmacist. And so they just kind of got on calls together and talked about what it meant to retire early and went over some financial concepts, talked to financial bloggers. And then now I think they might be the biggest personal finance, like retiring early podcast in the world. They just blew up. And it's because they're adding so much value. They really dive deep into these subjects that are kind of hard to understand and unpack. But if you're a podcast person and you want to hear people talk about that and unpack things live, then that's a really good resource for you. If you prefer video, I'm obviously partial to my own channel and my own videos. I also have an investing class where you can go through basically in an afternoon in the span of 3.5 or 4 hours and go from knowing nothing about investing in the stock market all the way through to everything that you need to know to really get started successfully in the stock market. And I realize a 4.5 hour span of watching me talk could be difficult, but it probably took me 10 years of learning to condense all that stuff down into 4 hours for you. So if you want to spend 10 years, you can go out and do all of the research yourself, or you can take the class and do it in 4 hours. And I also like that as part of the class, you get this downloadable resource. So you can either do it electronically in your phone and fill out information as you take the class, or you can download it and print it and physically write on paper. But with each class section, I'll ask you a question at the end of the section, and you can say for yourself, why am I investing? What's important? What did I learn from this section? You know, we talk about the different kinds of investing accounts, and I say, if your life is like this, if your priorities are like this is the right one for you. If your life isn't like that, if you prefer this instead, this one is for you. And so you can take those notes as you go along and say, oh yeah, these are the kind of things I want to invest in. Here's the accounts I want to use. Here's how I know I'm ready to invest. Here's the mistakes I won't make whenever I'm investing because Brendan warned me about them. Like, it just gives you the whole framework, and then you can take that along with you. So maybe you don't want to go back and watch the class again, even though you have access to it for forever. You can just take your little cheat sheet with you and have all of your own personalized information with you. So I think it's super powerful. If you're willing to dedicate an afternoon to that, I think you'll get a lot of value out of that. I just think that whatever the method is that you take to learn about investing in money, you don't take the shortcut route. You don't just watch 300 TikTok videos, and we definitely don't just take the advice of the people around us because there's almost no way that it's correct. It's amazing the terrible stock tips that you can get from Uncle Larry. It's amazing the kind of like money fallacies that people believe around us. Even if they seem like successful people, it doesn't mean they're right about the world of investing. So I think it's worthwhile to get a myriad of perspectives from people who have been intentionally studying the space and learning about the space for a while, because then once you have, let's say, 3 or 4 differing perspectives on what to do with your money, then you can decide in your own mind what's right for you. Okay, well, these guys say that's right. They want to do individual stock picking and day trading, and there's a potential there. There's a high risk, high reward. This guy over here thinks I should buy gold, which is kind of interesting because he also sells like doomsday prepper shelters. Brendan seems to like to invest in other things, and that guy doesn't invest at all. He just keeps all his money in cash. So we've got these 4 different perspectives. Where do I fall on the spectrum of those people based on my beliefs about my life in the future? What should I do? I think the worst thing we can do is not take enough time to have that full perspective. And I was likely to jump to those conclusions too whenever I first started investing because it's freaking confusing. There are so many terms, there's so many weird words and weird math things to figure out with compound interest and taxes and contributions and this percentage of your before tax pay and that percentage of your after tax pay. And the whole thing is just kind of a nightmare when you first get started because we're by nature financially illiterate. I was never taught this stuff in school. My parents didn't know this stuff to teach me. It's no big fault of their own. They weren't taught it in school. They weren't taught it by their parents. They didn't go seek out a bunch of books and nerd out about this stuff to self-teach themselves. And so I don't think any of us should expect to know how to do any of this stuff on our own. We've got to go and find out the information for ourselves. But the reason why I'm doing that, the reason why I think that we should be responsible for our own self-education, for our own investments, all that jazz is, whenever you offload that to somebody else, you are trusting them a tremendous amount. For one thing, if you're using a financial advisor and they're not a fiduciary, they don't necessarily have your best interests at heart. It'd be like walking into a car dealership and saying, hey guys, I have $1,000 a month max that I can spend on a car. Which one should I buy? Odds are at 99 out of 100 dealerships, they're not going to pick the best car for you. They're going to pick the car that makes them the most money, and they're going to craft a payment for you that will fall under that $1,000 per month goal that you gave them, but it's going to be a car that made them a bunch of money. It's going to be a bunch of warranties and add-ons by the finance department in the back of the house that makes them a bunch of money. And by you putting all your trust in them, you're saying, oh, whatever, that's fine. I'll get a worse car for me. I'll make you guys a bunch of money. I'll miss out on the benefits of having the right car for me just because I'm going to choose to be ignorant. Where the better car buying advice would be, I want a particular car to do a particular job for me, and I want a good deal on that car. Because you understand how the system works and you can do your own math and figure out what your own payments will be. You'll probably walk out of there with a better car for way less money. You won't get hosed on the back end by all those extras, and you'll come out on top in the end. But the only difference there is the preparation and the expertise going into that situation, and it's the same thing with investing with our money. I know the math seems pretty confusing for a lot of people, that if you work with an investing manager and they charge something like 1 or 2% of all the assets they manage for you, that you end up with hundreds of thousands of dollars of less of your own money by the end. But that's the way the math shakes out. I know it seems like, oh, 1 or 2%, that's fine. I can part with 1 or 2% because then it saves me all this time to not learn all that junk. I don't want to read those books on Brendan's Amazon list. I don't want to listen to 150 podcast episodes or go through his stupid 4-hour class. I'm not doing any of that. I'll just pay Joe Blow the finance guy 1%. But it's incredible the amount of money we give up by doing that. Like, let's go back to our previous example here. Let's say we invested for that same 23-year period, but instead of getting a 9% return, we get an 8% return because Joe Blow over there is taking his 1% cut. We go from $1.997 million, basically $2 million, down to $1.74 million. So you've given up over $250,000 over the course of 23 years just to not learn that stuff. Let's flip that on its head, and I came to you and I said, hey, what if I would pay you $255,000 to read 4 personal finance books, to listen to 100 podcast episodes, and take my one class? Class is about 4 hours long. You could do that math in your head and go, okay, well, I'll listen to the frickin' podcast while I drive. I'll get through the books somehow. I'll read the books at night instead of watching another episode of the Netflix show. I'll make it happen. And then I'll dedicate a Saturday afternoon to go through this silly class this guy made. But for the sake of getting $255,000, I will absolutely do that. That's the price you're paying to not learn this stuff, to not take it upon yourself to be the captain of your own ship and to go with the finance guy. It's insane. And some people charge even more than that. Like 1.5% isn't unheard of. What if we do that? Now you're down to 1.62 million instead of 2 million. So you've paid him $370,000 over the course of time to do that managing for you, which wasn't that hard. He didn't even spend that much time on it. He mostly just made phone calls to you to make you feel warm and fuzzy and to tell you that he's got everything under control and everything's fine. And he's not accountable for the ways that you're not making enough money as you wanted to. But can you imagine paying somebody $370,000 to do the stuff that you could learn probably on your own? It's just silly. So I would definitely not do that. And then finally, the question that everyone's been waiting for: what the heck are we investing in? First off, this is not investing advice. I'm not your financial planner. I'm not an investing guru. And legally, I cannot tell you what to invest in. If I was starting over today in 2024 and I had to invest right now, these are the things that I would choose to invest in. You've got to do your research and be the captain of your own ship to figure out what you want to invest in. But I do think it's worth you doing and you deciding what you want to invest in. For me, I'm picking really, really low fees through index funds and ETFs that largely track the market overall. I've for some reason made my investing more complicated than it needs to be because I've picked a bunch of different things. But if I could go back and do it all over again, I would probably pick a total stock market index fund, and that covers everything in America. I would pick a total international index fund that covers everything outside of America. And I might pick on top of that like an S&P 500 index fund or something like that, just to prioritize those companies that are most focused on growth. But that would be it. I'd call it a day. I'd be like 70% in the total stock market index, 10% in the others, or 15% or whatever, and I'd be done. And I would intentionally not pick dividend paying stocks. I would intentionally not pick anything that should generate any kind of income that I've got to pay taxes on throughout time, because I want this money to grow as much as possible. And I don't want to get taxed on the money that's in the taxable brokerage, because even those things I've picked will have like a 1% dividend. So you're going to get taxed on a little bit of it, but I want all of that emphasis towards growth. I don't want to have to deal with taxes. I'm not trying to take money out early. I'm in it for the long haul. Put the money in there, let it grow as much as possible, game over. Then maybe 15 or 25 years in, whenever I'm ready to take money out, then dividends could be interesting. It could be more fun. I could also just take money out of the account. You don't have to use dividends. But the point being, I would keep it super simple, super low fees, super diverse, and be done with it. I would simplify my life. I don't think my investing needs to be complex or convoluted or a lot of activities and actions. I would set it all up to happen automatically. And these are two more ways that I made mistakes in the course of my life. Was A, I worked with somebody who charged me high fees to invest my money, and B, I invested in things that weren't oriented towards my goals. So the guy that I was investing in was investing in something that he was calling A shares. I think it was 5.5% fees up front in year number 1, and then allegedly no fees after that. But a 5.5% fee, even on the money that you're contributing, is a huge fee. And the guy really wasn't adding any value to my life. It wasn't like I was learning from him. It wasn't like he was doing some kind of fancy investing strategy that required that kind of big upfront pay. It was a very basic setup, but the guy was just hosing me in terms of fees. And so I got out of that after a time, but I would definitely avoid that situation again by managing my own money if I was starting over right now this year. And the other thing I did when I first started investing was investing in ways that weren't oriented towards that goal. So right now the goal would be maximum growth, make as much money as possible as soon as possible. And that is not what I did. I invested in bonds, which is kind of silly whenever you're in your 20s. But I read books that said you should be, 90% stocks, 10% bonds or whatever. And so I did that. I invested in things like Vanguard's bond fund. I made sure that in my 401k, I had a mix of both stocks and bonds because it seemed like, oh, this is the wise thing to do. But when I'm not retiring anytime soon, and I'm not concerned about capital preservation really at all, because I don't have any capital to preserve, then I would stick that laser focus of growth. All I want to do is grow the money. So I'm going to invest 100% in things that should go towards that purpose. I also realistically would skip out on the target date funds, because sometimes a target date fund does have a significantly higher fee than something like a total stock market index fund. And so that kind of sucks because you go from a 0.03% fee to a 0.2% fee, and now we've gone up in fee by 700%. Like, that's nuts. Still a pretty low fee, but it's much higher than it needs to be. The other thing with target date funds, besides sometimes having higher fees, is they'll also change that mix of investments over time to get you more and more conservative. And so for me, I don't have any reason to let off the gas until the actual day comes that I'm trying to retire. From now until then, I'm full, wide open throttle, foot to the floor, as fast as I can possibly drive in this race car to grow the money as fast as I can. I don't need 20% bonds on my 30th birthday. I don't need 30 or 40% bonds on whenever I'm 45. There's just no reason. Grow the money. Leave me alone with your little specialized mix of stocks and bonds and things. All I want to do is grow the money. For me, I'm comfortable enough seeing that account balance vary every now and then. Whenever we've had a bad year, like in 2020 or even a little bit last year, and you see that stock market dip down 10, 15% or even more, I go, yeah, that kind of sucks for now. But it's part of the game. It's what's going to happen anyway. I'm here for the long haul. I'm not selling those investments just because the stock market goes down. I'm staying in. And because I'm investing regularly, I'm actually buying all of those dips as they happen, as long as you're buying in every month or every 2 weeks. However you have your automated investments set up, you're buying all those dips anyway. So you're benefiting from the slightly cheaper prices, and then it goes back up. Hopefully, God willing, America stays afloat and everything happens with the world economy the way that, we all want it to be. Peaceful commerce is happening and growth is happening. As long as all that stuff continues, we stand to benefit from it. And the reason why I wouldn't pick something like real estate, and the reason why I wouldn't pick something like precious metals or crypto or anything else, is that for me, investing in the stock market is this perfect kind of mix of a proven track record of growth over time, a much lower amount of risk than a lot of other investments like real estate, like crypto, like forex or day trading or anything like that that's super crazy. And yet it's still getting a good return. There are other people who want to invest in things like collectibles or coins or gold. And for me, that's fine if it's more of a hobby. Like I used to collect coins when I was a kid. I still have a bunch of coins, like in those little fold out cases where you have every single year of quarter pressed into the cardboard and it like stays in there perfectly. And then someday you complete the box with every mint and every quarter and every year. Very nerdy stuff, not very valuable. But as a hobby, it's totally fine. I just don't expect the growth in the value of gold to be such over time that you can retire off of that. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think we can count on that. Crypto is so variable, so speculative, so hit and miss based on whatever's in the news today. Whatever happens in Twitter can swing that crypto 30%. And for me, that's not investing. That's gambling and speculating and silliness. And real estate's tricky because if you have the expertise of the area, of how the real estate process works, of all of that stuff, you can potentially benefit because maybe you buy something under market value, you could have connections with contractors to fix it up, and you can flip the thing or rent it or otherwise have a cash out refi. There are ways to work that system properly, but again, you have to build up that level of expertise there. And for me, having built up this level of expertise in the stock market over the last 15 years, I'm here. I'm where I want to be. I'm taking advantage of what I know, and I'm going to maximize this system for everything it is. I don't want to go and change systems right now. Plus, the real estate market's kind of tricky because you can't be as diverse as you are in investing. Like, I don't need to be invested in just Coca-Cola. I can be invested very easily in every publicly traded company in America. And so even if some industry gets just totally hammered because of a global pandemic or whatever else, that's fine because I'm invested in all the other industries too. Where with real estate, if you buy a property and something really unexpected or unforeseen happens with that property, maybe you did some math wrong or you didn't know what you were getting into, well, sucks to suck. You just lost your investment. So I don't like the feeling of having all my eggs in that one basket either. I would rather have a lot of eggs in a lot of different baskets, if that analogy makes any sense at all. So if we had to zoom out and kind of summarize this whole plan in 1 minute, it would be, I would waste less time on screens, on video games, on anything that's not adding value to my life in terms of relational value or monetary value. And I would prioritize that extra time that I had by not doing those things so that I could work more or work more efficiently and make more money strictly to invest the money, not for lifestyle reasons. I would get my full 401k match in my company. I would look for something like an HSA match if that's available. Then I would invest as hard as I can into a Roth IRA until I max it out. And I would work as much as it took, including and up to getting a second job so that I had extra money on top of all my lifestyle expenses, a minimum of $10,000 or $20,000 per year extra that I could invest and put into a taxable brokerage account so that that money grows and I can use that money to retire as early as possible. Somewhere between 15 and 23 years from now, I would be not working or I'd be working so little at a job that I liked so much that it was absolutely worth the struggle to get there. I would be largely self-taught. I would learn about the stock market from podcasts and books and videos online. I might even take my own course if it was cheap enough, which right now it's very cheap. It's like $40. So it's definitely worth that tiny investment to then save yourself the opportunity cost of working with a professional who might take between $250,000 and $400,000 of my money over the course of time just by paying them a 1 or 2% fee to manage my money. It's not worth it. I will self-teach, I will self-manage, I will make logical decisions that maximize my chances of a return, but minimize my chances of a downturn. And I would be set up for the rest of my life. I would be open to opportunities because I would have so much more time and so much more money freedom than the average person whose lifestyle increases with their income, whose debt increases over time to the point where they're trapped in their job every day and they're stressed out because all they can do is keep working to keep making the payments and there's really no end in sight for them. There's no hope of retirement because they have such a fancy lifestyle and such a nice house that they can't afford to do anything but work. That's not the life that I want. Speaking of the life that I want, I see a beautiful window in front of me. I see mountains out the window. I need to go out there and experience those mountains. So if you've made it this far or you've enjoyed the video at all, if you want to take any of these things into consideration as far as what could potentially apply to your own life, then leave me a comment with the word mountain in it because I'm going to go and get on top of one of these mountains and see the beautiful view around me. Thanks for watching and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.